Hey, this is Mr. Coker with Algebra Lesson 5.3, Finding Standard Deviation. Now, first thing I want to point out, in this example, in the video, I'm going to use a small number of, like a small data set, and I'm going to be using some small numbers. So the numbers I'm going to use in the example, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4. The reason is because it's an example, I want to kind of keep the numbers where you can kind of visually, mentally comprehend them better. But in an assignment, you'll probably have more numbers. It does not matter how many numbers you have. It doesn't matter how big the numbers are. It's the same process. So the first thing we want to do, and there are 4 steps. So when you're finding standard deviation, the first thing you want to do is take whatever your data set is and find the mean of it. Now remember, you find the mean, you add all the numbers together and divide by the number of numbers, essentially. So step 1, find mean. We have 1, 4, 5, 1, and 4. So 1, 4, I'm going to do 1 plus 4 plus 5 plus 1 plus 4. Now, of course, you add those together, you'll get 15. Again, that's something you do in your head. Most of the number of, when you have problems with this, they're going to, the problems you have, typically you'll have a lot more numbers, and you may have bigger numbers and all that. Again, it doesn't matter. Just use your calculator. So, now, 15, of course, is not the mean. 15 is our sum. Now we need to see how many data points did we use. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had 5 numbers that we added together, so we divide by 5. Divide by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So our mean is 3. Now, that should be easy enough, no matter what numbers they give you. Next part, now this is where it starts sometimes to get somewhat annoying to students. It gets a little monotonous, kind of tedious is the word I'm looking for. It can get a little tedious, but go slowly, take your time. Just be careful with the math and you should be fine. Subtract the mean from each number and square the result. Now, what this means is I'm going to list my numbers. I'm going to write it 1, 4, 5, 1, 4. So now I'm going to subtract 3. I'll put a different color. I'm going to subtract 3 from each number. Again, when you have a lot of numbers, this can be kind of time-consuming, but it's okay. So I have my list of numbers. I'm subtracting 3 from each number. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 4 minus 3 is positive 1. 5 minus 3 is positive 2. 1 minus 3 again is negative 2. And 4 minus 3 again is 1. Now, the reason that I want to point something out here, and that is, then the reason I picked the number, I picked the, I wanted to pick some round out, some even numbers that would come out a little simpler, is, another reason is because of this part. We're squaring it. I don't want any decimals or anything. What we're going to do now is square each one of these. So each of our sums we're going to square. Now, notice we have some that are negative and some that are positive. Remember, when you square a number, your result is 100% of the time is positive. So it does not matter if you had a negative or you had a positive, your result's going to be positive. Negative 2 squared is the same as positive 2 squared. It's positive 4. 1 squared is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2, of course, is 4. Negative 2 times negative 2, or negative 2 squared, again, is positive 4. And then 1 squared equals 1. I hope you can see this. If you can't, the bottom line, it's a 1 is our result. It's the same, actually, as this one. So, now we have our list of the square differences. Now, before I move on to step 3, I'm going to reset, go through it again. We started with our numbers of 1, 4, 5, 1, and 4. Again, it's a small set of numbers. They're small numbers. It does not matter how many numbers we have, what they are. It's the same process. We find the mean of these numbers. That gives us 3. That is our mean. That's our first mean, and that's our catalyst for doing the problem. We then take this number and we subtract it from each of our original numbers. That's what I did here. We have our original numbers minus 3, and we get a result. We then square that result and we get the squared differences. Now that we have our square differences, we're going to move on to find mean of square differences. Same thing we just did, only now we have different numbers. Instead of 1, 4, 5, 1, and 4, we have 4, 1, 4, 4, 1. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 4 plus 1 plus 4 plus 4 plus 1 equals. Well, I add all those numbers up and I get 14. Right, so I got 14. So my number was close to the original mean, right? It was close to it. Not exact, but it was close to the original sum, I should say. Now I've got to divide that by 3. I mean by 5, I misspoke. I had 5 numbers. I'm going to do 14 divided by 5. I don't have a calculator, but I do have my phone to use as a calculator. I'm going to do 14 divided by 5 equals 2.8. And I have 2.8. Now you notice I'm still not done. 2 things I want to point out. First of all, it's close to 3, which is logical. Standard deviation, it is what we're finding in this mean. It should be pretty close to our original mean most of the time, and it will be here with our small numbers, our small number of numbers. We didn't have a chance for build up much variance. So anyway, now the last step is to find the square root. Now, again on my calculator, I'm going to put in square root 2.8, and this is what I'm going to get. Now I'm not going to write, I'm going to not write the whole number because it's a very big number. Not a big number, but it is. Actually, first thing I want to do is I want to write, square root 2.8. So we have it visually there. And I'm going to abbreviate it to 2 decimal places. 1.67 it does keep going. 1.6733200531. If you put that in a calculator, and you should, hopefully you do it as you follow along to make sure you're doing it correctly, you're putting it in the calculator correctly, and that's what you should be getting. And that's the square root, and that's the square root of our mean of square differences. So again, start with our 5 numbers. We find the mean. The mean is the catalyst for the rest of the problem. We subtract our mean from each of our original numbers, and we get the differences. We then square those differences, and we got our square differences. So here, we find the mean of our square differences. We got 2.8, and then we find the square root. It is a tedious process, but as long as you follow, as you know, the 4 steps, and you follow them carefully, you can easily do standard deviation. It's not a hard process. It's just it can be complex when you first started. Make sure you use a calculator, and you should be fine. Anyway, thanks for watching. Here's standard deviation.